September 15th, 1901, Volume 4. By shunning the cross, one remains in the dark. This morning, my adorable Jesus came all glorious, with his wounds more refulgent than suns, and with a cross in his hand. In the meantime, I also saw a wheel, with 4 sections of it leaning out, while it seemed that another section shunned the light and remained in the dark. In this darkening, the people remained as though abandoned by God, and bloody wars would happen against the church and against themselves. It seemed that the things said by blessed Jesus in the past are approaching at a fast pace. Now, on seeing all this, moved to compassion, our Lord drew near the dark part, and he cast the cross he had in his hand upon it, saying with sonorous voice, "Glory to the cross." And it seemed that that cross would call back the light, and the peoples, stirring themselves, would implore help and aid. Jesus repeated, "All the glory and triumph will be of the cross, otherwise the remedies will make the very evils worse. Therefore, the cross, the cross." Who can say how afflicted I was left, and concerned for what might happen? September 15th, 1922, Volume 14. Yearning of Jesus that the divine will operating in the creature become known. Continuing to let copying be done from my writings of what Jesus had told me on the virtues, I was feeling such repugnance as to feel I was dying. And I said to myself, others have the inventory of their things done after their death. I am the only one who has had the harsh lot of having to do it myself while I am still alive. Lord, give me the strength to make this sacrifice. Then, in addition to this, the confessor let me know the way they will follow when they put them out. Oh God, what pain! I felt embittered deep into the marrow of my bones. And blessed Jesus, on coming, seeing me so embittered, told me, "My daughter, what is it? Why do you afflict yourself so much? It is my glory, my honor that demands this, and you should be happy about it. Do you think that it is the creatures that want this, that do it, and that command you? No, no, it is I who overwhelm everything, who push them and enlighten them, and many times I am not listened to. Otherwise they would hasten more and would show more interest, and I am forced to push them more strongly, so that my will may be accomplished. You would rather wait until after your death, but my will does not want to wait. Besides, it is true that you have the link and the graft with my will. But here, it is not about you, but about me. It is about making known the effects, the qualities, the value contained in my will operating in the creature, when she lives in it. And then, if you do not want to interest yourself, you who know how much I care, and how I ardently yearn for the effects of my will to be known, from which I will receive the complete glory of creation and the fulfillment of redemption itself. Oh, how many effects are still suspended, both in creation and in redemption, because my will is not known and does not have its true kingdom in the creature. And since it does not reign, the human will remains always the slave of itself. Do you think that others will interest themselves in it after your death? Oh, how many things which I have manifested to souls are buried for lack of those who would interest themselves in my works. But if I have tolerated this with other things, I will not tolerate it with my will. I will give so much grace to those who will put themselves at work that they will not be able to resist me. But the most interesting and essential part I want from you. September 15th, 1926, Volume 19, Custody and Vigilance of Jesus While She Writes. How the Kingdom of the Fiat Costs Very Much. The acts done in the Fiat are more than sun. After riding for 4 hours and more, I was feeling completely exhausted in my strengths, and as I began to pray in His most holy will, according to my usual way, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, and clasping me to Himself, all tenderness, told me, "My daughter, you are tired. Rest in my arms." How much the kingdom of the supreme Fiat costs me and you. While at night all other creatures, some sleep, some enjoy themselves, and some reach the point of offending me. For me and for you there are no rests even at night, you occupied with writing, and I with watching over you, imparting to you the words and the teachings that regard the kingdom of the supreme will. And while I see you write, so as to have you do it at length and not become tired, I sustain you in my arms, that you may write what I want, to be able to give all the teachings and prerogatives, the privileges, the sanctity, and the infinite riches that this kingdom of mine possesses. If you knew how much I love you, and how I delight in seeing you sacrifice even your sleep and all of yourself for love of my Fiat, which so much loves to make itself known to the human generations. It costs us very much, it is true, my daughter. And to repay you, almost always, after you have written, I let you rest on my heart, which is overcome with sorrow and with love, with the sorrow that my kingdom is not known, and with the love with which I want to make it known, so that in feeling my sorrow and the fire that burns me, you may sacrifice all of yourself and spare yourself nothing for the triumph of my will. Then, while I was in the arms of Jesus, the immense light of the divine will that filled heaven and earth called me to go around in it, to have me do my usual acts, to have my I love you, my adoration, echo in the whole creation, that it might have the company of its little daughter in each created thing in which it reigns and dominates. Then, after I did this, my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, what light, what power, what glory the act of the creature acquires done in my will. These acts are more than sun. While the sun remains up high, its light eclipses the stars and fills the whole earth, bringing its kiss to all things, its heat, its beneficial effects. And the light's nature is to diffuse, nor does it do any more work by giving the goods it naturally possesses to those who want them. The acts done in my will are symbolized by the sun. As the act is formed, my will administers to it the light to form the sun, which rises up high, because the sun's nature is to be up high, not down below. Otherwise it would not be able to do the good it does. In fact, the things that are down below are always circumscribed, individual, limited in time and space. They are not, nor can they produce universal goods. So, this sun, formed by my will and by the act of the creature, in rising up high even to the throne of its God, forms the true eclipse. It eclipses heaven, the saints, the angels. It is as if the length of its rays would take control of the earth. Its beneficial light brings glory, joy, happiness to heaven, and the light of the truths to the earth. It dispels the darkness, the pain caused by sin, the disillusion of passing things. The sun is one, but its light contains all colors and all effects to give life to the earth. In the same way, the act is one. One is the sun of my will formed in it, but its goods and effects are innumerable. Therefore, the kingdom of the supreme Fiat will be a kingdom of light, a kingdom of glory and of triumph. The night of sin will not enter into it, but it will be always full day. Its refulgent rays will be so penetrating as to triumph from the abyss in which poor humanity has fallen. And this is why I have told you many times, your task is great, because I have entrusted to you my divine will, so that by making it known, you may place its rights in safety, so very unknown to the human generations. The goods that will come will be immense, and you and I will be twice happy for having worked for the formation of this kingdom. Then after this I was thinking to myself, my beloved Jesus says so many admirable things about this kingdom of the supreme will, so holy, but nothing of these admirable things seem to show on the outside. If its prodigies, its great goods and happiness could be seen, the face of the earth would change, and a pure, holy, noble blood would flow in the human veins, such as to convert one's nature into sanctity, into joy, and into perennial peace. At that moment he came out from within my interior and told me, my daughter, this kingdom of the supreme Fiat must first be well established, formed, and matured between you and me, and then it must be transmitted to creatures. The same happened between the Virgin and me. First I was formed within her, I grew within her womb, I was nourished at her breast. We lived together to form the kingdom of redemption between the two of us, one on one, as if no one else existed. And then my very life, and the fruits of redemption which my life itself contained, were transmitted to the other creatures. So it will be for the supreme Fiat. First, we will do it between the two of us only, one on one, and once it is formed, I will take care of transmitting it to creatures. It is easier to have a work come out well when it is formed in private, in the hiddenness of the silence of two persons who really love that work. And once it is formed, it is easier to manifest it, and to give it to others as gift. Therefore let me do, and do not be concerned. September 5th, 1929, Volume 26, How the Sun Returns Every Day to Visit the Earth. Symbol of the Sun of the Divine Will. The germ of the Divine Will in the act of the creature. I was repeating my acts in the divine volition, to follow its acts in all of its works, and I thought to myself, why repeat always the same acts? What glory can I give to my Creator? And my sweet Jesus, coming out from within my interior, clasped me in his arms to strengthen me, and told me, my daughter, the repetition of your acts in the divine Fiat breaks its isolation, and generates company for all the acts that my divine will does. So it no longer feels alone, but has one to whom it can tell its pains, its joys, and entrust its secrets. And besides, an act continuously repeated is divine virtue, and has the virtue of generating goods that do not exist, of reproducing them, and communicating them to all. Only a continuous act is capable of forming life and of giving life. Look at the sun, symbol of my divine will, that never leaves the creature and never tires of doing its continuous act of light. Every day it returns to visit the earth, always giving its goods. It returns to trace the goods already given with its eye of light, and many times it does not find them. It does not find the flower that it colored with the beauty of its tints, and perfumed by just touching it with its hand of light. It does not find the fruit to which, pouring its own self out, it communicated its sweetness, and that it matured with its heat. How many things the sun does not find, after it has poured its very self out with many acts, more than maternal, in order to form the most beautiful flowerings, and form so many plants, and raise so many fruits with its breath of light and of heat, because man, snatching them from the earth, has used them to nourish his life. Oh, if the sun had capacity of reason and of sorrow, it would turn into tears of light and of burning fire, to cry over each thing it formed and does not find. And in its sorrow it would not change its will by ceasing to communicate its goods to the earth in order to form again what was taken away from it, because no matter how much wrong they might do to it, its nature is to always give its act of light, in which all goods are present, without ever ceasing. Such is my divine will. More than sun, it pours its own self out over each creature to give her continuous life. It can be said that it invests the creatures with its omnipotent breath of light and of love. It forms them and raises them. And while the sun gives place to the night, my divine will never leaves on their own the dear births that came from it, molded, vivified, formed, raised with its breath and burning kiss of light. There is not one instant in which my divine will leaves the creature, and pouring itself over her does not communicate to her its various tints of beauty, its infinite sweetness, its inextinguishable love. What does my divine will not do for her and give to her? Everything. Yet it is not recognized nor loved, nor do they preserve within themselves the good it communicates to them. What sorrow! While it pours its own self out over each creature, it does not find the goods it communicates, and in its sorrow it continues its act of light over them without ever ceasing. So this is why one who must live in my fiat must have her repeated and continuous acts, so as to keep it company and soothe it in its intense sorrow. After this I continued to cross the endless sea of the divine fiat, and as I emitted my little acts in the eternal volition, many germs formed in my soul, and the seed of these germs was of light of divine will, varied with many colors, but all animated with light. And my sweet Jesus, making himself seen, was breathing on those germs, one by one, and as he breathed on them, those germs would grow so much as to touch the divine immensity. I remained surprised in seeing the goodness of my highest good, Jesus, taking those germs in his most holy hands with so much love, in order to breathe on them, and then placing them all in order in my soul. And looking at me with love, he told me, "My daughter, wherever there is the creative force of my divine will, my divine breath has the power to render the acts of the creatures immense. In fact, as the creature operates in my fiat, the creative force enters her act, placing it in the font of the divine immensity, and the little act of the creature converts one into font of light, another into font of love, others into fonts of goodness, of beauty, of sanctity. In sum, the more acts she does, the more divine fonts she acquires, and they grow so much as to spread within the immensity of her Creator. It happens as to the yeast, that has the virtue of fermenting the flour, as long as, in forming the bread, one puts in it the little yeast as the germ of fermentation. But if one does not put the yeast, even though the flour is the same, the bread will never come out leavened, but unleavened. Such is my divine will, more than yeast that casts the divine fermentation into the human act, and the human act becomes divine act. And when I find the germ of my divine will in the act of the creature, I delight in breathing on her act, and I raise it so much as to render it immense. More so, since we can call that act, our will operating in the creature. End of September 15th. Fiat.